taxi driver didn't speak. Which she was grateful for. Nora had run out of the right things to say somewhere. Around the third reception, the one with the egg salad sandwiches and the ants who kept touching her face, she had smiled until her jaw ached. She had accepted casseroles. She had stood at the grave in her good coat and thought, with a dull and private shame, that the ground looked very hard for November. Now the town came at her in pieces through the rain-streaked window, the pharmacy with the hand-lettered sign, the war memorial that leaned slightly east, the hardware store that had always smelled of turpentine and seed packets. Though she couldn't have said when she'd last been inside it, Harrow's mill looked exactly as it did in her memory, which meant it looked exactly as it did in photographs, which made her uncertain which she was actually remembering. She pressed her palm flat against the cold glass. "You grew up here," she told herself. "This is familiar," but the town slid past like a film she'd seen once, a long time ago. In a language she only half understood, the house sat at the end of Vane Road, which was less a road than a suggestion to gravel tracks with a strip of yellowed grass between them, hedged on both sides by hawthorn that had grown tall enough to close overhead in summer. Now, in November, the branches were bare, the taxi's headlights threw long shadows. Through them, like the spokes of a wheel, Nora got out before the car fully stopped. She couldn't explain the urgency, only that she needed to be standing when she first saw it, not sitting, not caged, behind glass. She needed her feet on the ground. The house was 2 stories, stone-faced, with a steeply pitched roof that had always collected weather. It had never been charming, exactly. Handsome, perhaps, in the way of things built to last rather than to please. The kind of house that people called solid and meant it as a compliment and also as a confession that they could think of nothing. Warmer to say, all the lights were off. Nora hadn't expected that to bother her. Her mother had been in hospital for 11 days before the end, and then in a funeral home for 3 more. The house had been empty for 2 weeks. Of course, the lights were off, and yet, she stood on the gravel drive with her suitcase in one hand and her keys in the other. And she looked at the dark windows, and something old and nameless moved in her chest, like a fish turning in deep water. The taxi reversed and vanished. Behind the hawthorn, she was alone. The key still fit. She'd half expected it not to. Some superstitious part of her had decided the house might refuse her, now that its owner was gone. But the lock turned on the first try. As if it had been waiting, the smell hit her before she found the light switch. Lavender water and wood smoke. And something underneath both of those, something particular and untranslatable. The smell of a specific life lived in a specific set of rooms over many decades. It was her mother's smell. It would fade within weeks. She knew this from somewhere, some half-remembered article. Something about the way a house exhales a person slowly after they are gone. She stood in the doorway, breathing it in, memorizing it with her whole body. Then she found the switch. The hallway resolved itself. Flagstone floor, iron coat hooks, the barometer her mother had tapped every morning without fail. A pair of Wellington boots by the door, mud still caked on the soles. A waterproof jacket on the hook. 3 pairs of shoes arranged with the precision of a woman who had lived alone for a long time and arranged things for her own comfort and no one else's. Nora set her suitcase down and walked slowly into the sitting room. She had expected it to feel smaller the way childhood places always do. It didn't. The ceiling was still high. The fireplace was still wide. The armchair by the window was still positioned exactly so, angled toward the garden. And there was still a slight depression in the seat cushion in the shape of her mother's absence. She touched the arm of the chair, walked on. The kitchen was cold. The clock on the wall, ceramic, painted with blue cornflowers, the hand slightly crooked, showed the correct time. Someone must have kept it wound. The solicitor, perhaps. Or Mrs. Hartley, from 2 villages over, who had a spare key and had left a note on the table. Milk in the fridge. Bread in the tin. "So sorry for your loss, Nora dear." Nora read the note twice. She folded it in half and set it down. She filled the kettle and stood at the window while it boiled, looking out at the garden. In the dark, she could only see the shapes of things. the rose bushes cut back for winter, the apple tree, the stone wall at the far end where the garden ended and the field began. She had sat on that wall as a girl. She could picture herself there clearly, bare legs, scabbed knees, a book in her lap that she wasn't really reading. She could picture herself there alone. The kettle shrieked and she turned away from the window. She carried her tea upstairs. The landing was narrow, papered in the same faded pattern she remembered, small cream flowers on a background the color of old bone. 3 doors. Her mother's room, the bathroom, her own childhood room. The doors were all shut. She opened hers first. The room was as she'd left it, which was to say, it was as she'd left it 22 years ago. The single bed with the white coverlet, the bookshelf still full, the desk in the corner with the brass lamp, the pole chain tarnished green at the tip. There was a faint smell of must and old paper and something sweet she couldn't identify. Potpourri, perhaps? Or cedar balls in the wardrobe. She sat on the edge of the bed. The springs made no sound. She looked at the bookshelf. At the titles she could have freed from here, the paperbacks with their sun-faded spines, the hardbacks her mother had bought from the school sale. She looked at the desk where she had done her homework. She looked at the window where the curtain shifted, very slightly. In a draft from somewhere, she had not been back in 7 years. And yet the room felt less abandoned than she did. She set her tea on the bedside table. She looked at the ceiling, and then, in the particular silence that follows grief, she became aware gradually, and then, all at once, of the other door. The one on the landing she hadn't looked at. Not the bathroom. The bathroom was on the right. There was a 4th door. She sat very still. She set her tea down. She counted the doors in her memory. The way you count the beats of a word you've said too many times until it stops making sense. Her room. The bathroom. Her mother's room. 3 doors. She had always known 3 doors, but she had seen 4. She got up slowly. The way you move when you don't want to disturb whatever thought you're standing inside of. She stepped back into the hallway. The landing was narrow, papered in small cream flowers. 3 doors, her room on the left, bathroom in the middle. Her mother's room at the end, and beside her mother's room, half hidden by the angle of the linen cupboard, she'd assumed was part of the wall. A 4th door closed. The paint on it was the same as the others, the same cream. The same slight yellowing at the edges, the same brass handle gone dull with age. It looked as though it had always been there. It looked exactly like a door that had always been there. Nora put her hand out, touched the handle cold. Just cold. She stood in the hallway of her mother's house, in the house she had grown up in the house she knew better than any other house on earth, and she tried to remember what was on the other side of this door and found. In the place where that memory should have been, nothing. Only a silence so deep and so particular that it had a shape, the shape of something she'd been, not remembering for a very long time.